why use e-learning instead of regular classroom training? Why use e-learning at all? And in partial answer to that, I have this quote for you from Mark Twain, which is, if you hold a cat by the tail, you learn things that you can't learn any other way. We have a picture to kind of show that. And the reason this is a partial answer to the e-learning question is because this quote by Mark Twain isn't as true as it once was. Now we can have a virtual cat and a simulated tail pulling, and we can get a glimpse of the consequences of that action. Instead of actually having to hold the cat by the tail, we can kind of dip our toe in and we don't have to get our eyes clawed out like this poor unfortunate woman. So a little bit about me. I was born on a sunny Saturday in Tampa, Florida, and now fast forward 23 years and I graduated from Texas A&M University with a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology with a focus on industrial organizational psychology. A few years after that, I graduated from Purdue University with a Master's in Organizational Leadership and Supervision with a project focus on training design and implementation. I've been a teacher and a trainer for various organizations over the past 8 years. And that brings us to today, where I've been with Trainertainment for 8 months. And I started off today with a coffee and a granola bar, but enough about me. What we're going to focus on today, first we're going to start with the intro to e-learning. And this is going to be us covering the 4 types of e-learning with some examples. Then we'll go into the organizational benefits of e-learning, which is how e-learning done well can help support an organization's goals. Most notably here is improved cost. Then we'll go to the learner benefits of e-learning, which is how e-learning done well can support a learner's development. And then we'll move on into interaction and learning games and why games and gaming principles aid so much in that learning process. This webinar is designed to be fun. It's designed to be interactive. There's going to be times where I'm going to call out for a bit of action on your part. I'll solicit you for answers to questions and for volunteers to tell stories if anybody's interested in that. And there'll be a Q&A session at the end, but if you have a question that's pertinent to the section at hand, please don't hesitate to hit the raise your hand button and or type your question in the box. So let's go ahead and move on to that intro to e-learning. E-learning falls into 4 categories of varying complexity and interactivity, and those are knowledge bases, online support, synchronous and asynchronous learning. So we'll start with knowledge databases, which are the most simple form of e-learning. You may or may not consider these actual training depending on your point of view. However, they are definitely the most basic form of e-learning because you're online and you're learning. They're often offer indexed or alphabetized instructions, explanations, and or guidance for performing specific tasks and answering questions. They're moderately interactive. You type in your keywords or you type in your question, and then you browse or you search a list of topics. So I have a few examples of knowledge databases for you, but I'm only going to show you the picture, and I want you to guess what familiar knowledge database this picture represents. So go ahead and type your answer into the chat box when you recognize the first picture, which is already on your screen. Can anybody type into the chat box where that comes from?
I screamed out question mark whenever he showed this to me, and of course that's not correct. I'm sure somebody knows it better than I do, but they're not letting on, Dave, so you can go ahead.
Okay. So the answer to this first one is this is the Microsoft Help button. In this knowledge database, you type in your keywords, and then it returns instructions on different issues based on the questions or the keywords that you typed in. Okay, the next one.
I know, it's because I'm on this phone. I'm trying to mute myself. I need to hang this phone up, but I'm not sure we'll get the recording if I do, but I'm going to hang it up.
I brilliantly said, a golf ball. No, oh. Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, that's correct. So Wikipedia is a knowledge database in which you can search for darn near anything. It returns an article, it gives you details on whatever you want to know about. Okay, finally, the last one is a knowledge database that we all maybe know and love, hopefully.
I know this one.
All right, Beth, please.
This is our knowledge database. This is Express Training available 24/7.
This is Trainertainment's own Express Training. And in this knowledge database, we have a list of recorded webinars for any subscribers to go back, refresh their memory, or learn anything new that they may be interested in related to Trainertainment areas of business. So that's knowledge databases. Moving along to the next form of e-learning is online support, which is similar to knowledge databases. However, the help comes from a live person. So this raises that interactivity, it raises that complexity, as it allows you to type more specific questions and get more specific answers to those questions. So examples of this would be forums, online forums, live instant messaging support, and email. Email being the least preferred of form of this, just because it can be so slow going back and forth with questions and answers. But here's I want to get you guys involved. If anybody has a great story to share about a live instant messaging support situation, I'd love to hear that. There's some good stories out there. If not, we'll just move on.
If they can hear me okay, can somebody type in their box if they can hear me okay? Somebody typed in and said Mac support sucks. Lean close to me, Dave. You think maybe you can get that microphone. I'm not crazy about calling for online support when I know it's got to be around the world, and that's not a discrimination issue for me. But I always feel so disconnected when I get somebody at an India call center. Number one, there's a little bit of a communication gap, and it frustrates me. They're not close enough. I don't feel like they can really take care of me. But I know that's what I'm getting when I do online support stuff and I do online chat, and I don't have any of the anxiety or the frustration that I have. So I much prefer to, if I'm needing help, to do chat in that format. So is that what you're talking about, Dave?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Beth. If anybody else has a story, please raise your hand. No takers. All right. So let's move on to synchronous learning. And synchronous learning is actually the highest in complexity and the highest in interactivity. Synchronous training means that the training and the learning are going on at the same time. So this training is done in real time with a live instructor. Participants log in at a set time. They can communicate directly with the instructor and sometimes each other. They all view the same screen, and they can even raise their hand to ask questions or raise their virtual hand. So can somebody give me an example of synchronous learning?
This is an easy one.
Everybody's on at the same time?
There you go.
All right.
Lewis Sims says, Lewis is one of our very best students, by the way, and he says, we're on it now.
Perfect.
Yes,
Webinars are a fantastic example of synchronous learning. Thank you, Lewis. And then that moves us into asynchronous training. This is what most people think of when they hear about e-learning. And this, being the opposite of synchronous, means that the training and the learning are not going on at the same time, or in other words, not live. So the facilitator records or produces the training, and then at a later time, the participants can log in to access this lesson whenever they need it. One downside of this is that you can't ask questions of the facilitator as they come up. But an increasingly common way to deal with this is to have a forum or some type of social media platform where we can ask each other or ask the facilitator questions and get specific answers to our questions.
Ask Kelly Bednar. Kelly Bednar's on the phone with us, and they do a great job with Bowling University. And I know that their forums with the Bowling University courses are really fabulous and have a lot of interaction. Can we ask Kelly to speak to how they do that in that particular one? Kelly, I hope you don't mind me calling on you. If you do, just don't talk, I guess. But I'm gonna unmute you if you don't mind talking about that. Kelly's on twice, so I can't tell which one he needs to unmute.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry that I was on twice. Once I was on my phone before I got to my desk, so no, I just forgot to turn the phone off. So we do a asynchronous program with the BPA Boeing University program, where the interaction is both through the assignments, where as the student turns in an assignment, there's a private dialogue back and forth through the instructor and the student, and there's also through I wouldn't call it a chat room, it's the old-fashioned message board discussion posts that are stimulated by an assignment for the students to post their thoughts on that particular topic, plus asking questions of other students. And we find that there's some great discussion in those environments for us with the Boeing University.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And recent studies show that this is actually a growing and a super fantastic way to accelerate that learning process. That collaboration is shown to be incredibly effective. So, okay, great. Thank you, Kelly.
I will point out, Kelly said that he said that most of their students that take the bowling online stuff think that the courses will be synchronous. So Kelly, are you saying that people who sign up for the online courses are thinking they're going to be more in a webinar format rather than in the learning format that you have them in, which is strictly e-learning?
Yeah, they believe, again, misconceptions that are out there in the industry is that most everything is synchronous, that I have to be on at 7 p.m. to learn from this particular person. And that's a big issue, especially in our entertainment industries throughout that your company reaches out to. It's specifically for us, the Bowling Center Entertainment and Bowling Center programs, that that they can't. They've got to be somewhere at that specific time. For them to lock themselves into 7 p.m. on Tuesdays is not a reality. And we find that a majority of our students that are getting in, or we're recruiting in, believe that it will be that they have to be on at a certain time. So it's just a conception in at least our industry that they think that it will be asynchronous, and I mean, it will be synchronous and not asynchronous. When we explain it to them that they can come in and go as they please over the course of the 3 weeks of the course, they're very happy to find that out.
Imagine. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more later, but once again, thank you very much for your input. So that wraps up our quick intro to e-learning and the 4 types of e-learning. So we'll move straight on into the organizational benefits of e-learning. These are improved training costs, increased productivity, and standardization. So first we'll hit improved training costs. And what we have here are some comparisons between the cost of e-learning and the cost of classroom training over several different categories. So the first one we see here is a ratio. And I'd like to ask you guys, once again, type in your chat box if you know the answer. Can anybody guess what the ratio on your screen is referring to? The first one's 173 to 1 and 114 to 1. I'll give you a couple seconds to type.
Nobody's being brave enough. I can tell them what I guessed since I was completely dead wrong. I thought 173. I thought, okay, for the same cost, we could train 173 people in an e-learning format compared to classroom training, that we could do 114 people based on those costs. That's what I thought. I was wrong because I've already done the webinar.
That is wrong. The correct answer is this is the number of hours of development on average it takes per 1 hour of training. So for an e-learning course, we have 173 hours of development per 1 hour of training. Now this is a really This is the average for high-level e-learning with a lot of those interactions, a lot of those learning games, pictures, and all of that stuff, high level. Obviously, the lower your interaction goes, the lower your development costs go, or your development time. And then for classroom training, we have 114 hours of development time per 1 hour of training on average. So in this category, we find that classroom training way has the edge over e-learning in cost. For development. But e-learning has the edge on this one because in the amount of delivery per e-learning, we can create a course or purchase the course one time, and then each time someone in your organization accesses it, training costs per individual decrease. But with classroom training, trainer costs and time increase with every session because we have to pay for everybody's time, especially the trainer's time and the trainees. In traveling and fees, e-learning once again has the edge here because there is no trainer travel. There's no live trainer. And with classroom training, you have to, you can pay those travel fees, the eating and the sleeping. And even if you don't have to bring in an outside trainer, once again, we're looking for paying for the trainer's time, which adds up for each session. So e-learning has the edge on this one as well with a $0 amount. Less average training time per student for e-learning. With classroom training, we have a set time for each trainee. The most recent numbers suggest that e-learning courses, because they're self-paced and more tailored to the learner, training can take up to 50% less time, which is huge. Because if you think about it, classroom training can only be as fast as the slowest learner can digest that information. Otherwise, they're getting left behind. They're not going to get your message. And then your faster learners will tend to get bored and lose focus because that class is too slow-paced for them. In other words, no matter what your level of learning is, no matter how good you are, every participant must be in the training session for the exact same amount of time. With e-learning, each learner moves at their own pace, moves at a pace that's comfortable for them. They can skim over information that they already know and then focus in on the areas that they need the most work in. So with e-learning, you're paying a lot less in downtime and training downtime. And then finally, in e-learning, there's no prep time because, once again, there's no live instructor. We've found that for classroom training, the average is 3 hours of prep time per session that a facilitator needs to get ready. So once again, e-learning has the edge with that $0 amount. So we see that despite the high development cost of e-learning, in the long run it actually ends up being much cheaper than classroom training, especially per session. Now the most recent studies suggest that overall e-learning over classroom training will provide around a 20% savings on training costs in the first year. That goes up to 50% in each consecutive year. So we're talking massive savings there. The next benefit would be increased productivity. Especially, this is a huge benefit in these economic times when companies are trying to do a lot more with a lot less. Increased productivity is a great benefit of e-learning because we don't have to pull people off the front lines to attend a fixed time training session. All training can be done during the trainee's downtime. And once again, since e-learning courses progress up to 50% faster than traditional courses, it has a huge impact on total time spent in training. And then also, training can be broken up into multiple lessons and modules. So participants can grab a lesson here, grab a lesson there when they have time to get to it. And that's why Trainertainment's goal is to make training modules and lessons that are no more than 20 minutes each. So training can always be broken up and taken over multiple sessions, and we're not having people sit down for long amounts of time at once.
You know, Dave, one of the things you and I were talking about as we were prepping is that, you know, we just finished the Party Summit last week in Las Vegas, and you know, we've kind of built our company on the written word, the DVDs, and on-site training along with coaching and stuff. And the way I watched those guys at the seminar last week, everybody was so pumped. It was great to be together, and certainly that's a great way of learning. However, they all just were like cross-eyed with all the information because we'd done an all-day deal, and Kelly, we see that with bowling management school all the time. They just get inundated with all that information, and how great it will be to have systems and processes in place with the e-learning component so that they can go home and then more gradually implement and institute that knowledge so that they're using it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that that's our goal, right, is to provide that e-learning support that helps them really grab hold of what we're trying to teach.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll hit that message a lot harder coming up here.
Sorry, I get so excited about everything.
You're all right. So finally, that brings us to the last organizational benefit, which is standardization. With e-learning, we get a consistent message every single time. But with classroom training, even a great facilitator is going to have variation in delivery across different training sessions. You know, they might be having a bad day. Maybe they're sick of teaching the same class over and over and over again. Or maybe they just innocently forgot to include some key points in a session. And then the message can get even more varied if there's multiple instructors teaching the same courses. One facilitator might think that the best way to do task X is to do A, then B, and then C, while another facilitator might think it's easier to do C, and then B, and then A. Then we get confused trainees and confused messages out there in our organization, and when it's best to have that consistent message across the board every single time, and that's what's great about e-learning. No individual differences in delivery, no instructor bias. E-learning delivers the exact same message every single time, and no rambling instructors, which is I find to be nice. And that wraps up organizational benefits, so let's move right on into learner benefits of e-learning. The first one here is real-time access. In real-time access, what we're talking about is that the course can be accessed anytime, anywhere. We can access it from the office, from the bedroom, from the beach, from outer space, if we can get internet up there. But the point is that learners don't have to rearrange their calendars to make it to training. And this is huge, especially to the younger generation, those millennials who value that flexibility and that freedom in making their own time. So we get increased motivation to take courses there. The next one is freedom to fail. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you probably got a message on freedom to fail. But the point here is that adult learners don't like to fail. And more to the point, they don't like to fail publicly. But let's face it, real training, real learning requires some failure to gain experience. E-learning provides a safe and simulated environment that gives learners the freedom to test the environment for different responses and consequences based on different choices that they make. And then immediate feedback lets learners know what they did right or what they did wrong. And then when you make the experience repeatable, that gives them the opportunity to correct those mistakes. And all of this provides for a powerful learning tool that reinforces any message that we want the learner to come away with. So let's take a quick look at our example here, or the one that I drew up. The situation is you're driving along and you come across one of these in the picture to your right. What do? And here are your choices. Choice A is to keep going and scream obscenities at anyone in your way. Choice B, make a complete stop, look both ways, and then keep going. Choice C, make a complete stop, wait for the light to turn. D, keep going knowing you are safe due to your powerful predictive abilities. And because I like you guys, I want you to fail here. So if everybody could go ahead and type in a wrong answer into the box there, I'll just choose the most popular.
And the most popular answer is A. A is the most popular answer.
And that brings us to that immediate feedback. Obviously, you don't want to scream obscenities at anybody. It's a good way to get yourself beat up. Our feedback on this one is you just cost yourself lots of money. Hope you have insurance. Whenever you see a red light, you should come to a complete stop, wait for the light to turn green, check that the intersection is clear, and then continue on. And you notice in that feedback, what we want to do is provide a correct message. And if not the full correct message like we've done here, then some hints or some directions at what the correct message might be. That gives the learner a pretty good chance of changing their behavior in the future. And because we can go back, it makes it that repeatable experience that we were talking about. And that gives us now the chance to correct our mistakes. So,
Dave, on our eLearning, we've got 2 eLearning courses ready of 3 for our group selling piece. And what I've noticed in taking our tests, the way you've designed that stuff is that we won't even let somebody pass the course until they go back and get the correct answers. Isn't that correct?
yeah, in the final test, if they get one of the answers wrong, then we will reinforce the message by having them watch the pertinent slides, movies, or retake that interaction.
Right.
So yeah, we make sure that the message is getting across. So anyway, we've gone back and now we get the chance to make the right decision, which hopefully you all know is to make a complete stop and then wait for the light to turn. And congratulations. You guys all just won the Safe Driver Award for knowing that you're supposed to stop at a red light. Nicely done. And what this is showing is some type of certificate, some type of reward, points or fanfare is also going to help reinforce the message, that a positive reinforcement for them. Now on into improved retention. The way that we improve retention is actually many ways. The first one is that you have these basic elements, these basic types of content that you're going to see in an e-learning course. And those are pictures, text, and audio. You might include video on this list. I didn't, just because I think that video is more like a picture-audio combination. But one of the ways to improve recall is to combine these elements together. So we see that anytime that these overlap, anytime these elements meet on a screen, we get improved recall, whether it be pictures and text, pictures and audio, and text and audio. And then when we get all 3 of them together in one design, that really sets up that ideal platform for information retention. And then when we add interactions and quizzes, that creates a powerful, the combination creates a powerful reinforcement of the message, and once again just ups that recall. What we've found is that in e-learning, over classroom training, we get a 15 to 25% increase in learning with significant increases in retention and transfer of training. So they're recalling stuff for longer, and we actually see a change in behavior, them using the tools that we give them out on the job. So that's fantastic. 15 to 25% is amazing. And then another good way that we can improve retention is to use visually striking or visually engaging backgrounds that really draw the learner in. So I have 2 examples here, and they both come from the Rapid eLearning blog. And I recommend that you check this out. It's an amazing blog, all on eLearning. It's where I get most of my information from. He does a new blog every Tuesday. Anyway, this first one is a very typical looking eLearning quiz. It's over art history. The challenge here is to name the masterpiece. You get your 4 choices. You got a picture. Totally valid quiz design. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. It gets the information across. But when we compare it to this, when we put the learner in the background, where we place them in that art museum where they're analyzing the paintings, and then now the challenge is which painting is titled Plum Estate, and then they choose from the 3 pictures on the wall there. This is shown to be a more engaging concept, and when you engage the learner in this manner, just visually engaging them, that retention goes up.
I love this. I love that example, Dave, because when you flashed that up for me, I felt like I was sitting on that bench getting ready to make my selection, and I couldn't even, with the previous slide, I didn't even care. You know, I couldn't even feel like I made a choice. But when you and I were sitting here, you know, I said, I think it's picture number 3. Do you know the answer? And I really wanted to get there and click and see if I knew the answer. So
So you got drawn in.
I did with that second one. Did anybody else have that same kind of reaction? this. You're a fool. Okay, whatever, it's okay. No worries, keep going.
And so the second example here is a safety course on what to do if your tire goes flat. Once again, we just have that slide format, and this is, once again, this is a totally valid design. The layout's not bad. We've got different colors. All the information we need here is on the slide. But once again, let's take the learner out of that slide context and put them into a more realistic-looking background. This becomes a lot more engaging. You know, everything is themed towards driving. We have our question is posed on a license plate template, and the continue button is a one-way sign. And I really like this one because it's got your different choices, lets you know if you're right or wrong, and then feedback on the side. So once again, so much more engaging, and that just really, really ups the ante on that recall. It's great. And the last learner benefit is growth opportunities. And what we're talking about here is if you have opportunities in your center or in your organization where you find open positions, say in sales and management or supervisor, and your staff doesn't necessarily have the skills that you want them to have for those positions, providing an e-learning outlet for them to gain those skills is a really powerful way to put the power of advancement in your employees' hands, and ups that motivation. It gets them to want to take those courses because their future is now in their own hands. So that wraps up our learner benefits. And now we'll move into interaction and learning games and why these are so powerful. E-learning is really, it offers that interactivity that you can't get elsewhere. And interactivity can be anything in the form of clicking on an appropriate response to a question, clicking to animate an object, start a process, or drag and drop items into lists or into something else to practice a skill. But really the point is, in large part, interactivity requires a shift from pushing the content out at the learner, which is really common, and instead to place them, create an environment of curiosity that entices the learner to pull the content in for themselves. We get a higher retention this way and a more satisfying learning process. And a good way to get them to do this is to create a situation where they need to make an informed decision. So instead of flooding them with piles of information and virtual tomes they have to read all the way through to get to the point, set them up with opportunities to embrace that curiosity, let them deal with real-life situations, and then learn through their own decision-making. It's much more powerful. And in this we can use the principles of game design to help design an interactive course where we maximize those opportunities to learn. If you think about it, games are amazing at motivating people to do repetitive tasks, not to mention retaining information and applying it in other situations. Think about games where you go through a series of tasks where you learn about the environment and then you use tools that you've discovered along the way. Those same techniques can be incorporated into many types of learning programs. Games can take you through an adventure in almost any type of scenario or situation. Being able to explore, try, and then succeed or fail makes for excellent training. So just for fun, I want to present a couple of scenarios to you. First is, how do we kill a Goomba? If you guys know this, please type it into the chat box.
I had to ask, what's a Goomba? I know the next one.
A Goomba is this little guy here, this little monster.
Jump on him, somebody says.
Jump on him. Bam. Dead. So, good. Next scenario, you're walking down a dark alley, it's nighttime, it's scary, and then out of the darkness, bam, a ghost. How do we deal with this guy? How do we get rid of him? This time, we have choices. I want you to pick A, if you think it's the proton pack, B, if you think it's this yellow pellet here, and C, if it's the silver bullet. All right, everybody type in your answers in the chat box. Well, I heard B.
You eat them.
B is the correct answer, so we eat the pellet. Bam. See you later, Ghost. Great job there. So maybe these aren't the best examples of e-learning games or learning games, since you're not likely to confront Goombas or ghosts in your real life. But if there was suddenly an infestation of Goombas and ghosts, you guys would totally be heroes. So nice there. The point here is that you all remembered this information across years, and even when taken out of context, you can identify and use the right tool for a specific situation. In actual learning, what we want to do is put the learner in situations where they need to make the decisions you want them to make. This is an excellent opportunity to use the role-playing and simulation capabilities that e-learning is so great at providing. This creates an opportunity for them to demonstrate their understanding, and then if they're deficient in understanding, they're motivated to pull the information that they need to make an informed decision. So 5 steps to a solid interaction is: step 1 is the introduction, 2, content, 3 is the challenge, 4 is the choices, and 5 is the consequences and feedback. And to take you through this, I'm going to show you a game that I developed for our groups course, one of the games we developed for groups. The introduction here is where you set the stage and the expectations for the course. So the introduction is, the game is what would you say, and you're this saleswoman here, and the situation is that you're trying to make a successful group sale, and what you need to do is click on the answer that best represents what you would say in the situation provided. Okay, so that's our introduction. The next 3 will come at once, and that's context, challenge, and choices. The context is where we actually put the learner in the situation, maybe offer some hints at what to do next, and depending on your design. The challenge is what you want them to do, what the end goal is, and we almost always want this to be one of the course objectives. And then the choices are going to be, which tool do you want to use, or which door do you go through, or which direction do you go, or just those multiple choice answers. And one of the big things here, and I'll show you what we did, we want the choices to all be plausible or viable answers to the question. If we make them really obvious or really silly and don't deal with the nuances in real life, then we don't put any pressure on the learners to pay attention and collect the right information, which is the goal. We want them to learn and not guess their way through the situation. So here the context is you're on the phone with this customer. She's interested in planning a group event. She's in a decent mood, and you have some choices down here on what you want to say to her saying, I'm interested in planning a group event. And then after they make a series of choices, each which produce a consequence, with some that have positive consequences, some that have negative consequences, we end up at an end goal and then give that feedback. So what we did here after a series of failed answers from our saleswoman is now we see that our customer's in a terrible mood, and she says, no thank you, you weren't very helpful. And our feedback is, you lost the sale. You need to give more information and qualify the details of the event. The customer shouldn't have to ask. Feel free to give it another shot. And so this is what we were talking about before with the repeated experience. They click that replay button, they go back to the beginning of the game, and they can test out all of the other conversational choices to find out how the customer reacts. By the time they're done playing with this game, hopefully they will know the exact steps of a successful sales conversation. And then once they do, they'll click end, and they'll move on with the course. So to wrap up games and e-learning here, I just wanted to present to you this list. And I know that this slide is ironically not inherently exciting, despite what I just said, until you realize the implications of the information that it contains. This is a dream list of high points of effective training. The interesting thing is that traditional classroom training provides for virtually none of these things, which is unfortunate because psychology of learning tells us that these are absolutely key in successful learning. E-learning, done well, provides for every single one of these things. So it soon becomes clear that e-learning and games are vital to any successful curriculum. And to ignore them when you're doing and designing training is letting massive opportunity pass you by. So the list here: motivation, learner-centric, personalization, incremental learning, contextualization, a rich media mix, safe failure, immediate feedback, collaboration, and lots of practice. When we include all of those things in an e-learning, man, is that a powerful, powerful opportunity to learn the information we're putting out. So that wraps that up. We'll go ahead and move into our Q&A section. So if you have a question, please type it into the question box or raise your virtual hand.
Dave, I just want to say how much I appreciate you doing this webinar for us. And again, what a great value I think it is for you to be on our team. You know, as a training company, it's our goal to stay right out in the front. And I do think that this e-piece is so important. I'll reinforce. I've got a question typed in. Let me grab this from, and y'all can certainly raise your hand, and I will be glad to unmute you. Any questions at all? Any direct feedback for Dave? But this was his first webinar, and we tried to set it up a little bit like a blended learning opportunity, because webinar format's always a little more challenging if you've been used to training in person. And just from a leader point of view, I think you did a great job, Dave.
Thank you, Beth.
Anybody offer up any feedback here? Anybody have any questions? Want to raise your hand? All right.
Nope.
Go ahead
and
finish up for us here.
So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for attending today's webinar. Like Beth said, it was my first, so I hope I did all right, and I hope that you found the information enlightening. To show you how much I appreciate it, I'm offering this webinar special. What we're offering is for $99, unlimited access to our group sales online course, and you'll get the group sales manual, the book, for free. This $99 is normally the cost of the group sales manual alone, and it's brand new. It's just out. So if you're interested, you can send an email to dave@trainertainment.net, and I'll send you a coupon code and instructions how to log into our site, register for an account, and then activate this coupon. One caveat is that the course will not be active until April 1st, so you'll have to wait until then before you can use your coupon. But once again, that's all I have, and thank you so much for attending today. I had a blast.
Thank you, Dave. And I will tell you, Lewis Sims reached out and said that he thought you did a great job, and then our own Ricky Brooke thought you were awesome. Of course, we always think you're awesome at Trainertainment. So thank y'all so much for spending time with us today. Hope you got as much out of it as we enjoyed having you be a part of what we do. Kelly, thanks for your added feedback. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.